jobs kind of shifts. So we let the traffic stop go, send them on their way, call mobile crisis, and we actually got him into rehab that night. They came, picked him up, had an interview with him on scene, and then took him to a rehabilitation center. So we keep resources on hand. If we can help you, it's not like Adrian said earlier, it's not about the arrest. We're looking out past the arrest, because I don't want to come in contact with you again on those terms. I'd rather get a victory story.
Thank you, Sergeant. One more here.
Hi, my name is Taylor Williamson, and I go to Fairmont State University. My question is, what is your viewpoint of deterrence, as punishment as a deterrent for crime? And what else can we do to directly address recidivism issues?
You know, my view on that is we deal with probably 3% of the population, law enforcement does. 3% of the population, wherever you go, I don't care if you're in Kansas, you're in Maryland, wherever, 3% of the population is wreaking havoc upon us. These are the ones that are incorrigible. And I hate to use that word, but some people are. Those are the ones that I look at to say, these are the ones that need to be in jail, because we can't do anything with them. Now, the rest of the population, those who get in trouble, I'd rather see them enter different programs. I believe in what we have is drug court, you know, where if you have a drug problem, you're addicted to drugs or something like that, and you've been involved in some minor crime, you know, you can go to drug court. You know, as long as you agree to go through this drug treatment program and you complete it successfully, you know, then you've met your requirements. You don't have to go to jail. You know, so I believe in programs to help that portion of society that really wants to do better. There is a portion of society, and we have to acknowledge this, we have to admit it, there is a portion of society, no matter what you do, no matter how many opportunities you give them. Everybody familiar with, unfortunately, the mother who came to Annapolis to send her son off to the Naval Academy and was shot? Well, that trial took place in our courthouse. And I had the opportunity to see the defendant himself. That is one of the people I'm talking about. He should never see light again. He's had gun convictions, five gun convictions before he killed this woman. And he was home with an ankle monitor because somebody thought that was okay. And he cut that ankle monitor off, and then he ended up killing that woman. With a straight bullet. Because he was trying to kill somebody else, and he's a bad shot, luckily for the person that he was trying to kill who did not know him. And the bullet hit the woman while she was in her room at the hotel. She came out, it came through the balcony window and hit her. You know, so when I talk about people who are encouraged, that's one of them. He should never get out of here.
I hate to cut this off. This is so fascinating. We got one more question, but there's going to be an opportunity for you to ask more questions later on. I'll tell you how to do that in a minute. One more question.
Hi. Is it working?
Yeah.
Okay. So my name is Noor. I go to Florida International University. So police discretion is undeniably a huge part of the job. However, problems can arise when discretion begins to resemble discrimination. So do you believe that there is a legitimate or problematic uses of discretion, and how can you change the problematic aspect?
You know, we have discretion, and I believe we should have discretion. Because if I did not have discretion in what I did, I would have never gotten here today.
You guys want to check out the menu?
Yes. Team meeting day 2.
That has long existed. But then also we need to look at some of the other post-civil rights retaliation. Anti-poverty and crime sentiment came about, which was, again, designed to further restrict Black upward mobility, because that's what it is always about. We begin to see the surveillance of Black freedom fighters. There are many of whom who are in jail to this day, right, for just choosing to stand up during the 60s, the 70s, the 80s. Many of us probably don't know their names, right? But there are various folk who are in jail to this very day, some who were killed, you know, and there are some speculations that they were killed with the help of the state, But largely, the criminalization of blackness reemerges under this neoclassical theory of crime and causation. And many of us have read through many of these theories in our criminological theory classes, but because of this reemergence here, these sort of social process explanations and rehabilitative ideals begin to sort of lose sway. You know, understand back in the 60s and 70s, because of what was happening outside in society, right? The movements and the sort of raising of consciousness around the administration of justice, you know, not only with adults, but with youth and special populations and such. That era brought about a much deeper understanding of why we need to instill rehabilitative ideals as opposed to what was already in existence. So to give you somewhat of a understanding of that, I'm sure many of us may have read the crime control model versus the due process model. I don't know if that was on the exam today, but it was a concept developed by Packard. And what we began to see in the 80s is this sort of switching back to the crime control model. Martinson was another famous criminologist who had written an article, we call it the Nothing Works publication, right? And he argued that, look, rehabilitating offenders is just a waste of time. They can't be rehabilitated. You just have to throw them behind bars and throw away the key, right? And so this was the sort of governing ethos from the 80s all the way up until today in some cases that sort of shifted the administration of justice. And neoliberalism brought about this sort of hyper-individualistic notion that's begun to sort of take control over how we study crime, how we administer justice, right? How politicians begin to talk about crime, because make no mistake about it, both sides are guilty of this, Democrats and Republicans. And again, blacks, it brought about this notion of hyper-individualism that began to blame blacks for their own shortcomings. Right? As if the black condition doesn't exist within a vacuum of all kinds of repression and oppression that are racialized, right? As if the black condition in existence isn't one of a carceral nature itself, right? I came up in a housing project, and for generations, my family has been there. This is my maternal side. For generations, we've been there. But I don't think like...
Okay, sounds good. We have detectives here. Yeah. Figure it out.
Oh no.
Okay. Yeah. What's up, girl? What are your names? I'm from.
I walk down the street. I think he's a criminal. I should be able to stop him. What do you mean reasonable articulable suspicion for a stop? I have to be able to articulate. What are you talking about? My articulation is I'm a cop. And he looks like a criminal. No, we can't do that anymore. And cats, reasonable expectation of privacy. And there were a number of cases in the 1960s. The Warren Court did not go over well at all. There was a huge push, probably the first time in the United States, to impeach a Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, because people were like, what the hell is he doing? He changed criminal justice just like that. All these requirements that never existed before, now all of a sudden they exist, and they did not go over well. There were stories of, people, I'm going to leave policing because of this, just like now. Stories of detectives going, I'm not doing that crap anymore. Are you kidding me? These guys are getting away with the same thing now. So with all that's old is new, and what's new is old. So that was in the 60s. Fast forward again.
The top 4 teams and move on, potentially to be crowned as the 2023 Quiz Bowl champions.
And first place for the t-shirt competition, Florida International.